It's Off Exit 10, presented by Capital District Sport and Fitness.
Your place the first time when I met you back in 2017 before we opened the gym. So we have Linc Bigelow on today, everybody. He's a partner in Colorize, a paint store which now has three locations.
Yep.
In the Capital District.
Yep.
So I first walked into your store, and so my dad owned a painting company.
Right.
So when we went to open up the gym, he's all about what colors are we going to use, what are we going to use, and then where are we going to go. And I think he knew Mike from somewhere in the past, and I walked in, and sometimes you just feel like you're on the same, frequency with people when I chatted with you. So
yeah, man, it's energy. First of all, thanks for having me. Cool what you guys are doing here, and second of all, it's hard to believe that was 5 years ago. You know,
it's wild. A lot has happened.
We've been through a lot of things in those last 5 years. You know,
that's
an understatement.
I was just gonna say that. I'm like, it's definitely an understatement. 5 years has been a lot. I mean, just in the last 2 years, we've gone through a crazy amount of things.
Yeah, well, you open a business and you're like, bring on the challenges. That's why you're doing it. You need that
Right.
competition and that challenge in your life, but you don't foresee a pandemic hitting you.
No, and I think you plan for a lot of things, but who plans for the entire world to stop?
Right.
You know, and you learn a lot of lessons from that. And honestly, at this point, 2 years later, I think there's, I look at it as a blessing. Like, there's been a lot of things that in my own life, I appreciate what we've had to go through in a lot of different ways. So, we can get into all that if you want, but.
Yeah. I think I want to start a little bit just about your background and what brought you to where you're at today, to helping and becoming a partner and opening Colorize and growing to 3 locations, and just kind of your drive and background that brought you there. Because before that, you worked a more corporate.
It was corporate America, yeah. So previously, I worked for the largest paint company in the world. And there was a lot to be gained there. Obviously, their culture, their training, all those things. I was there for about 12 years. It's actually where I met Mike and Donnie, who founded Colorize. And when we started, they used to let you run it like it was yours. So if you had a territory or a store, as long as you were taking care of your customers and things were going the right way, they kind of left you alone. Over that decade plus, they went from like 2,000 locations to 5,000. Stock price through the roof. Like, the entire culture changed, where now all of a sudden they were playing in my opinion, a stock price game instead of a people game. And the game I'm good at and the game that we learned was the people game. So I met Mike probably 10 years ago or so. And so he actually called me. Weird how the universe aligns, but we used to talk every Friday. After I gave him this book called The Compound Effect, I gave it to him at a national sales meeting. And I was like, you should read this. It's just kind of one of those deals where it's an aha moment for me, where it's like all these things that you think are happening to you, like, they're all your fault. Everything's your responsibility. And when you start to look at everything through that perspective, everything looks different. And so I brought it to him at a sales meeting, and I can't remember, it was a few months later. We'd literally been talking every Friday, like holding each other accountable to stuff. What are you working on? How's it going? And all of a sudden he went quiet for like 4 or 5, 6 weeks. And I didn't know what he was up to. I didn't know what was going on. And out of nowhere, he's like, hey, if I'm not at Sherwin, like, we got to keep this up. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know you other than Sherwin. I don't know what that means. And so we went a couple more weeks without hearing from him. And my wife was pregnant at the time. And this is what I mean about the universe aligning. My wife went into labor. I'm driving her to the hospital. And I get a text from Mike. And I hadn't heard from him for weeks. And he said, I'm leaving Sherwin and I'm opening a paint store. And I had a red light. I don't even know why I stopped. But I'm like, I'm a little busy at the moment. Like, I'll get back to you. And my son was born 24 hours later. When everything settled and everything was done, I texted him back, and I'm like, as your friend, I wish you the best. As your competitor, I hope you don't sell a gallon of paint. And that was kind of it for the moment. Summer came and went. Like, that's a busy time for all of us. They were getting this thing, started and figured out, and I was, working hard at the location I was running. And then he started like chipping at me with like, would you ever consider this or would you ever consider that? And finally I was like, look, man, like if I'm going to bounce on what I'm doing, what are you doing and what do you need? Like I knew it was just the two of them, and if it was going to grow into what I knew they were capable of turning it into, they weren't doing it by themselves. So I was honored that I was on the short list of people that he was interested in calling, considering that, you know, with all the positions he'd been in his, I think him and Donnie were both 20 plus years, give or take, at Sherwin. So to think that they would reach out to me was an honor, and it didn't really take much convincing for me. It was more trying to get my wife, who grew up in Maine, to think she was leaving for upstate New York. And here we are 5 years later, and everything's awesome, dude. Everything's no regrets.
That's awesome.
Did you always feel like when you were at Sherwin, like you wanted more, you needed to do more?
Yeah, like I was always one of those guys that was like, I was good at the job, I got results, because if I'm gonna do it, that's how I'm gonna approach it. But the whole corporate thing never sat well with me, and at the time I didn't even realize it. I was always like looking for something else, you know, like, but really it was just gonna be trading one thing for another. Like I went and applied for Hertz and I passed everything and they offered me the job, and I'm like, what's the difference between a can of paint and running a car? Like that's not it. You know, I had a buddy selling washing machines. Like I was looking at all these different things, and actually Mike was there for a couple of them. He was my sales manager, and he's like, what are you doing, man? Like that's not it. He's like, don't leave unless it's something worth leaving for. And that came up 10 years later when I'm like, I thought you said not to leave. He's like, no, I told you not to leave unless it's worthwhile. And you know, here we are. This is worthwhile. So I always had that tugging at me, and I just always had a connection with Mike, you know, in particular, even when he went from Maine to Manhattan to Connecticut. Like we just always stayed in contact. You know, I had a lot of respect for his business acumen and the kind of guy he was. So
yeah,
Sounds familiar.
That's important. I was going to say that's like Dan Jones, my business partner, and myself. So we went to college together at Springfield College in Western Mass, and we played baseball together. We're the only two dudes on the team from upstate New York, so we kind of connected on that. And we're close in college, but never, you know, we stayed in touch over the years, but weren't like the best of friends. But knew we were in the same industry, knew we had the same like passions and goals, and always touched base about that. Hey, what are you learning right now? What are you doing with clients? So when the time was right, it's like with you and Mike, I hit him up and said, hey, are we going to do this? Here's what I'm thinking. And we roll from there.
And I mean, even that trickles all the way down to when you reached out to me.
Same thing.
Like, same thing. Mike and I went to high school together.
Yeah.
But we took different paths to eventually where we are now. But we always stayed in contact. Like there was always here and there, like every couple months or whatever. What are you doing? What's going on? How I ended up here for the soft opening and everything. And it's just like over the course of time, like you said, everything kind of the universal lines and works out for a reason. You brought up like blessings from like with COVID, and like that's how I viewed a lot of things that happened for me was like blessings in disguise. And
for sure,
that's how you kind of have to take those things when like you said, nobody prepares for the whole world to shut down. Like you prepare for a lot of things. That's definitely not something you prepare for. So, you know, coming out of that, the way you are now and the way we have and everything, it shows a lot of similarities. I feel like even in two completely different businesses.
Sure. Well, and I think that's why we connected, you know, those years ago. I mean, if we're being honest, I met you then, we've stayed in contact through, you know, online, but I don't think I've seen you in years, like face to face. And I think there's something about like energy, you know what I mean? You can feel energy when you're around certain types of people. And I don't know if you want to call it God, you want to call it the universe, whatever your thing is. Like, I believe that things happen in our lives to, you know, cues in our life that are trying to kind of like get you to pay attention to something or steer you in a certain direction. And if you listen, if you're still enough to listen, you're gonna move in the right direction. If you're not still enough to listen and you're just pounding your head in the wrong direction and you're doing something that you shouldn't be, it's gonna continue to be rough on you until you pay attention. You know, that's sort of the experiences I've had, you know, over the last 5 years certainly, but just when I look back over my entire life, that seems to be the theme.
Yeah, you gotta be still enough
to slow down.
To slow down, but to know the right people to connect with. And that's from being able to read their energy, know what their intentions are, you know that they could be different from you, but like-minded in the sense of just how they go about their life and treat other people and are goal and process oriented.
Exactly. Yep.
It's like, because you go the other way, we were talking about before, it's like you could have, what'd you say? You could have a hangover from talking to somebody.
Yeah, we were talking about energy. Like, I don't care if it's alcohol, I don't care if it's activity, actions you're taking, or people. Like, it's either gonna create positive energy in your life or it's gonna drain you. Like, if I hang out with you and it gives me a hangover, like, we're done. Like, I have to, and we all have to eradicate that kind of thing from our lives if we're goal oriented, if we're focused, if we want certain things out of life. Like, you just got to roll that way. And if you don't, that's cool. Like, I have no issues with anybody living however they want to. But if you actually say that you give a shit, you have to roll that way, or you're full of shit, really.
Like, there's two things that drive me fucking crazy the most when I sit down to talk to somebody. If they go to one or two places or one or two directions. If they start complaining or if they start gossiping.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Nobody's got time for any of that.
No, I just spent 80 hours talking to people all week.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend my free time in those two realms.
Right. But also, like, you don't want to not have empathy, right? So to me, it's like, if you're going to come to me with a problem, I want to be somebody that's approachable, especially as a leader. Like, this is your business.
Right.
If you're just like, tough shit, quit whining about it, get back to work, like, honestly, that's corporate culture. You want to tie corporate and small business together. Like, that's like, just show me the numbers kind of stuff. But at the same time, if you come to me the first time with the problem and we talk about it, like, you better act on it from there. If you come to me again in 2 days and we're talking about the same thing, like, at some point I'm wasting my time pouring into you when you're not paying attention, when you're not willing to do your part to meet me in helping you. Right. And I think there's an epidemic of that in society, and I think it kind of filters itself into so many things that we see. In however anybody wants to feel about society, like, there's a lot of things that come down to personal responsibility and taking ownership of helping yourself. Right. Why am I going to help you if you're not going to help yourself?
Exactly. And that's kind of what you were just saying, is like how I view it. Like, yes, you can come to me with a complaint about something and I'm going to be a listening ear. But if you come to me a week later with the same problem and you haven't done anything, like, if you come with me the same problem and I can tell things are getting better, great. Awesome. You're doing something. Like, that's fine. But, like, if I can tell you're in the state, you haven't done a damn thing to make it better, like, why am I don't want to listen to it. And I've said it to people before, like, I don't want to hear you complain about that because you've literally been complaining about that for a month.
Like, at what point is that just drama?
At what point are you just letting that just be there for no reason? Like,
is that your identity? Is that what you want to be? Is that who you want to be?
And like you said, there's a difference between, like, having an empathetic ear and then just, like, feeding into the drama.
And there's a fine line, because I find, like, I love being around people that are geared to win. Like, it's probably tough to follow up saying I try to be empathetic with what I'm about to say, but, like, there's one of the guys at work, and I'm always telling him when he's pointing things out, I'm like, losers do loser shit. And it's like, let them be who they're gonna be. They're gonna show you who they are. And winners do winner shit, right? Like, so being aware of that and understanding, like, in enough time, people are gonna show you who they are, and then it's your job to align your energy with whatever energy you need. Otherwise you're going to end up with that hangover we're talking about. You know what I mean? You're around the wrong people. You're not going to get any of the results you're looking for. And then what?
That's real with friends, and that's, like, even more real with small business, because, like, listen, the margin for error is much smaller, right? Like, your cash flow isn't as much as these big corporations. It's you got to make sure that your people are in the right places. So, like, when you started with Mike and Don, like, how I was talking to the novice guys last week about this, but how much did you talk about structure and your roles in the beginning, or how much did things just kind of play out and fall into place as you went?
Honestly, like, I wish this was a different answer. I wish it was going to sound better than this. Like, we made a lot of it up as we went along. So the reason it worked early on especially is because we all were on the same page. So we didn't have to talk about, like, what's our take on customer service? What's our culture? Like, basically, when we opened the doors, we were going to say yes to everything, and then we were going to work our faces off to figure it out. And over time, because it started with the four of us there, and that's just how we rolled, as people showed up, there wasn't a lot of conversation. And I think there reaches a point in business where, like, you do have to start to implement core values. You do have to, like, because you're not there and involved in every decision. But early on, when it's that small, that's almost going to bog you down and slow you down. So all we did was show up, unlock the door every morning, and go like hell until it was time to close. And it just, customers were drawn to us because of our energy, because we were different than the box stores and the corporations, because we gave a shit. Like we would drive a quart of paint from Clifton Park to Del Mar. And you're like, that's a losing transaction, which is true. Like we lost money on that sale, but we were playing a much longer game, knowing putting the 4 of us in one store, like we couldn't afford to do that to begin with. So we knew there had to be a second store. Right. We knew there had to be a third store. And by kind of making us top heavy, it forced us to just run like hell, and build it, as we go.
Yeah, it's like similar to here. Like I could have went into this by myself and rented out 1,000 square feet and tried to make it work. But it's like, how long would that have taken me to make it what it is today if I didn't bring in Dan right away,
right,
with his skill set and his network and his brain and his eyes to also see things, to almost be top heavy up front. But no, we got to work our ass off now
to get there,
so we could get to the start line, and then we could go.
Right.
And it's also having that second or third or fourth pair of eyes and brains on it, where okay, you have something that pops in your head that's an idea, and that person goes, no, that's fucking stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, don't do that.
Right.
Like,
well, and also like what you have to know what you want in your business. Like if you want to just be a trainer and you just want 1,000 square feet and you want X amount of clients and you want to be left alone, you can kind of do it that way.
That would have been fine.
Right.
But if you have a bigger vision and you want to impact more people and you want to bring more people onto the ride, like I think the mistake a lot of us make in various aspects of our lives is that we're waiting for that perfect time. Like I'm not ready, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you're waiting to be ready to have a kid, you're never going to have a kid. You have one kid and then you're having a conversation with your wife and you're like, are we ready for a second? We're like, fuck no, we're not.
Right.
But once the kid's here, we will have to figure it out. And that's the approach we've taken in the business is, I don't think, and I'd have to ask Mike, but I don't think we've said no to anything yet. Like we opened the first one at the end of 16. We had a really good 2017. The next one was open in the spring of 2018. The next one was open in the spring of 2019. And then we would have kept going if, there wasn't the major hiccup that was kind of just like, all right, let's focus on these 3. Let's really get these where they need to go. And now we're feeling confident enough to start looking at, what's next at this point. So
right. Yeah, the yes thing's big. I get, people get frustrated with me because I'm such a yes guy.
Yeah.
But it's weird because in my personal life, I'm such a no guy. But in business, I'm such a yes guy. Are you like that? Or are you a yes guy everywhere?
Yeah. Well, I guess what do you mean when you're a no guy in personal life? Like,
I'm
you don't
not.
Do anything?
Yeah, I'm not one to. I'll say no to going out. I'm not good at staying in touch with friends.
Yeah.
That's one of my biggest flaws. I like put a lot in this business hat, and it's shown, and this place has grown, and I'm happy here. But it definitely pulls a lot out of my personal life, and it hasn't. Just the past 10 years since I left college.
Yeah, I think that's probably common. I mean, when I first got here, like I told you before we started recording, Jay was 10 months old. He's going to be 6 next month. So like to have a 10-month-old and a business that's 3 months old at the same time, like I didn't have time for anybody. And it's been a sprint this entire time. Now I'm at the point where I realized last fall, I'm like, listen, I have great people around me at home. I have great people around me at work, but I'm a transplant. Like I came from Maine. I'm missing like some camaraderie. I don't have that personal thing outside. I'm running a rut between home and work, and that's it. And so, I spent some time thinking about it, and then what really kind of sprung us is my wife went through some things at the end of last year, and she ended up finding a mom group, and then we ended up starting to go to church, and like all of a sudden there was some community of really good people that I was stoked to have my kids around. Then my son started jiu-jitsu in January, and now all of a sudden, like, people that put themselves in that position to go through jiu-jitsu are a certain kind of person, and I found out really quickly, like, I like those people. So I started jiu-jitsu like a month ago. I've been to a handful of classes, and it's something I'm digging. So I was very much a no person, and there are certain things, back to energy, that I won't do, but I do think, like, continuing to push yourself into those yeses, like, I've never been into combat sports. I've never been a wrestler. Like,
Right.
I was a stick and ball sport guy. So now I'm out here, like, getting my ass kicked by these guys, and it's like, I'm going to be 40 this year, and it makes me feel like I'm still willing to put myself in those positions.
Right.
I just value that. You
Right.
know?
What'd you play growing up? Baseball guy?
I played baseball as a kid, but then I was football, basketball, and track and field.
Okay.
Yep.
Those three things. How much of an impact did that play on you going into the workforce and
Yep.
then you taking your career where it's at right now?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because I think a lot of the things that you learn in sports, and you're learning them as a kid, so you don't even realize you're learning them. You're just playing, right? I think there's so much value in that. And I think, honestly, I lost, and I don't regret any of this, but I lost, like when I got to college, I played 3 years of college basketball, and then for disagreements with my coach, I didn't play my senior year. And then from then, like, I just kind of started hanging out. And then I took a job because I had some painting background. I had a business degree. Like, this made sense. And then I fell into corporate America where, again, no disrespect to corporate America. I know it feeds a lot of people and it's for a lot of people. That's great. But for me, it just put me kind of in this trance where, like, oh shit, it's Monday. I'm going to go sell some paint.
Right.
And I did that for a decade. And so I lost touch with a lot of the things that I learned as a kid playing sports. I was still competitive. I still wanted to put up numbers, but I didn't really give a shit about it that much, you know? So when I jumped over the counter to entrepreneurship, it pulled a lot of that back out of me. Like, as a kid, you have, you know, your mindset that's cultivated through sports. Your physical health is every day you have to show up and sweat, right? Like, all of these elements of your life that are so important forever are just drilled into you by your coach. You don't even have a choice. Get on the line and run until I tell you to stop. Like, okay, you know? So I pull on a lot of that stuff now because how many times a week do you come here and you don't really feel like it?
Right.
Right? How many workouts did you do this week that you weren't really that into? Like, most of them. If we're being honest, everybody's like, oh my God, you know, Mike is just so motivated. Like, motivation's bullshit, really. Like, it'll get you started, but
Routine's what keeps you going.
And discipline. Like, routine's great. It's discipline.
Routine. And I was talking to a high school kid today who was bitching about having to work tonight or tomorrow night.
Yeah.
I said, listen, you're not going to want to do it. I said, but it's like in the gym when you're doing like a lot of work. You're building up your capacity so that you're going to be able to handle more later on in life when it's hard. Right. I said, think about work like that. Like, you're going to put in a late night.
Yep.
You're going to work a bunch of hours. You don't want to be there. But now you've just built your capacity for working.
And you're going to feel good when you're done.
For sure. And then next time that comes, it won't be as bad.
Right.
And then you build up your capacity even more.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. When you program a workout, right, and you're 90% of the way through it, whether you're doing the workout or your client's doing the workout, how often are you like, all right, we were going to do 10, but we did 9. Like, that's good. Like, do you do that? Or do you finish?
You finish, unless somebody has an injury, they're rehabbing, that's different.
Right.
Let's put that aside. No, you fucking finish.
Yeah. And my point is, and this is how I look at it, like, you have a calendar in your life. And if you don't, you should. You know, piece of advice, get a calendar and use it. Because what everybody does is if you're sitting down on your couch comfortably on a Sunday afternoon planning your week, everything sounds really good. I'm going to work out 5 times. I'm only going to eat chicken and rice. Like, everything is like so easy because you're sitting on your ass on your couch. So it goes on your calendar with no problems. And then the alarm goes off at 5 o'clock on Tuesday and you're like, oh God, like, I don't want to go to the gym. And now you're negotiating yourself in the time of action. So all my negotiations exist when I'm creating my calendar. And then when it's time to go, like, I'm done talking to myself. It's set at 5 a.m. I'm in the garage doing this workout, doing these sets. Like, that's it. I'm doing it. And so if you can put that into every facet of your life, like, it takes the thoughts and the decisions out of it. Like, discipline actually sets you free. It's not restraining you like is the popular belief. It sets you free to stop thinking about everything and just do what is going to take you towards what you want to be.
But it's so hard at first.
It is. Well, and
That's
It's so hard forever, really. Like,
Right.
it never gets easy, but
It gets routine.
it gets you get callous to it, is
And
what it is,
Ah.
right? Like the first time you put 2 45-pound plates on the bar, like it's not easy.
No.
You just get stronger. You get more callous to it over time. You know.
Well, and that's like, I had a client in New York, and I was talking to her, and I asked her, I was like, how's the workouts going? Like, and I do online with her. And she was like, well, they're going great, but it just doesn't feel like it's getting any easier. And I'm like, well, that's because I make it harder before it gets easy. I'm like, she's an older client, and I was like, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. Right. And when I said that, she was like, that makes so much sense, because she's like, she's I think she just turned 70. Yeah. So she's like, I have so many friends that don't do this stuff. And I was like, yeah, because it's hard.
Yeah.
But you want to keep doing it because you see the benefit of it.
Right.
It's part of your routine. You're disciplined, all that kind of stuff. And, back to like when you're writing out a schedule, like it seems overwhelming.
Sure.
When you do it, because I've done it, and at times like I've been in that situation where like I made my whole schedule for the week. It sounded great, and then I'm like, snooze.
Yeah.
Snooze, and it just everybody does it. But
that's
then,
negotiation.
right? But then you get into that pattern of like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing, and like for me, I tried to make it originally. I feel like, and this didn't work for me when I tried it. I tried to make every day exactly the same. Didn't work for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But now, because of the way my schedule is here at the gym and the way my schedule is outside of here with my online clients, like each day is a little bit different. But I know, okay, I'm going to wake up Monday at this time. I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to go to the gym. Yep. And I'm going to do this at the gym if I have time. Obviously, if we get people signed in the morning, it's different. Then Tuesday, I'm going to do this. Wednesday, this. So like I have like a routine and a schedule that I know, and it's in my phone. Yeah. I know exactly what I'm going to do.
Sure.
And I have certain hours of the day that are free, so that I can, if I feel like I need to, just chill for an hour because I'm grinding to the bone, like I do that.
And you got to schedule that. Like the whole concept of like just grind, like what is that either? You know what I mean? I think
we've talked about this.
Yeah.
Mike and I have talked about this before.
It's not sustainable. Like the idea of balance is bullshit. The idea of grinding forever, working 80 hours, like again, what kind of life do you want? Like if that's your deal, cool. But what do you actually want? And I think most of us get lost there. Like, do you want what you think you saw somebody else have? Do you want, like, what is it? Well, what do you actually want?
And now with social media, that gets way fucking harder.
You're always losing if you go on social media.
100%.
You're never where you should be. You know?
Because you can't help but compare yourself to others. And that's a dangerous path to go down.
Yeah. Yeah.
We struggle with it every day with athletes and even adults in here, but especially with the young athletes in here. We grew up, you couldn't see John Smith in California. Right? You saw the guy that you were playing against, you're like, we're gonna beat him. That's it.
Well, and the thing that's unfortunate is even now, they only see his highlight reel.
Right.
They don't see like, oh great, like he's better than me. Like, what if he gets up at 5 a.m. and runs 3 miles before school and you don't? Right. Like you can't, it's not apples to apples. You can't compare yourself to people that you don't know
what they're doing.
So call him or DM him or whatever you want to do and find out what he's doing, and then do that for a long enough time, and now start to compare yourself to them.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're going to catch him if you're doing what he's doing. Within your,
within your capacity.
Within your capacity.
Yeah. But social media is tough because it's a necessity in small business because it's a low cost marketing move that is going to reach a lot of your local audience, right?
Sure. Yeah. I think everything's changed in the last couple of years. I do think that people are starting to wise up to what's real and what's not. Hopefully it brings us to a better place, but it's like anything else. Like you're either creating or you're consuming, right? If you're just there to consume and somebody else is there to create and you're comparing yourself to them, like you're not going to be happy about it.
Right.
Right.
But that self-awareness. People don't even know that's fucking going on in their head.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I'm gonna jump. Like I think we're gonna talk at some point about calibrated mindset, but I want to bring it up right now because what you just mentioned about routine and schedule. Like I went through a period of time where I was so rigid. Like I lost the joy in my life because I was on the grind.
Right.
So every day was the same. And then it's like, well, what about my wife? What about my kids? What about me? Like, I have a sense of humor. I think shit's funny. Like, why am I not? Like, I am just head against the wall.
Yeah.
So I read a handful of books. There's a bunch of different people that have come out with these concepts, with these pillars in your life. But instead of trying to balance a day where you're like, all right, I got to have time for my kids. I got to have time for my wife. I got to have time to read. I got to have time to go to work. I got to have, like, okay, there's only 24 hours. Like, it's impossible to balance a day. So going back and sort of drawing on growing up as an athlete, all of those pillars that made you a good athlete, right? So when I look at Calibrated Mindset, I basically came up with focus, fortitude, family, freedom, and faith. So focus is your mindset, and faith is your belief in the universe and God, higher power, whatever's going to kind of keep you spiritually centered. And I put them on the end because those are the guardrails for the rest of your life, right? Like, if your mind's not right, you're in trouble. If you're not spiritually aligned with whatever you need, like, you're in trouble. So when you start to layer these things into your week and into your month, it puts you in a place where you're not trying for balance, right? Like, focus being mental work, like what kind of books you're reading, what kind of podcasts you're listening, who's around you, like what's going on here. That drives everything else. Fortitude, I put in like the physical health realm, because you have to have fortitude to continue to show up every day. And that's important. And if you start to skip that, you're going to feel it mentally, right? Family is, everybody has a different relationship with family. It's about relationships. Who's in your life? Family can be friends. It's not blood. It's just like, who are the people in your network? Freedom, I have an upside down probably definition of freedom, but freedom to me is duty. And I think it's become glaring the last handful of years that people have a misconception about freedom. Isn't just go do whatever you want. Freedom's your responsibility to show up and put into the work to make yourself as sovereign as possible. So freedom gives me the duty to go create a business, if that's what I'm called to. Freedom doesn't mean I just get to do whatever I want and be upset when I lose, right? And then I already touched on faith. So I bring that up because when you talk about how do you balance your day and every day is the same, that's like eating, chicken every day. Like, we're not built for that.
Right.
So I found that by creating this concept and talking to myself through those, it's freed me up from all that. Like, how do I balance things? If I'm touching on all those every week, like, I'm good.
So it's more about balancing the week than it is. And
making sure you're doing the things that you said are important. If in any one of those buckets, you, not me, have decided that I do this for my mindset and it works. I tried that and it doesn't. I do this physically because we're all different. And everybody's trying to go to the phone and be like, I have to do this, isn't it? Or I'm not successful.
Right.
Like, that's bullshit. So I just use this as a way to like keep myself aligned with all four wheels in the same direction.
Well, and like, that same umbrella, I guess I'm going to use that term, that you're using for everything in your life, you can use it in a smaller facet, right? Yeah. Like fitness, for instance, right? You can use it for that. Work, whatever it is. Like, think of it in a week. Don't think of it day to day. Like, that's one thing that I try to stress and hear about when it comes to fitness stuff. Like, you got fitness, nutrition, all that kind of stuff goes hand in hand, right? And the biggest thing I feel like most people struggle with eventually is the nutrition side of things. And it's always like, well, don't think of it like if you fuck up one day, it's okay.
Right. Yeah, for
sure. You got a whole fucking week that you can balance it out. And that's where for you talk about like, okay, yeah, I may not have spent enough time with my family this day, but tomorrow I'm going to not do as much reading for myself. Right. And I'm going to spend more time with my son and my wife. Like, it's all, whatever it is.
The reason it's called Calibrated Mindset is because it's a calibration. If you're trying to balance everything, you're going to lose. But like, what happens to an instrument over time as you use an instrument, it falls out of calibration and you go back and you adjust it. So to me, if those are all knobs in your life, right? And you're like, all right, I want my diet to be on point, but now it's Monday night and I'm out with buddies that I haven't seen for 6 years. And we're going to go to Monday Night Football and we're going to have, beer and wings. Like,
I'm gonna have
let yourself off the hook and get back to it tomorrow.
Right.
The problem is if we do that on Monday and they're like, oh, fuck it, the week's gone.
Yeah.
I'll start next Monday. Like, starting next Monday is like how everybody punts their life away. Where if you can kind of take on this different perspective, it frees you up to be okay operating between the guardrails and not, fuck it, I might as well just not even do this. I can't do this.
You can do this, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to just be.
Exactly.
Right. People get really black and white, or they just get way too lazy
Yep.
with things.
Yep.
But that's because I'm going to go back to, it's hard. Okay, so we map out, these 5 F's that you have. So focus, fortitude, family, freedom, faith.
Yep.
Like if we were Paul and I were to write this down right now, those 5, and say, tell me what this means to you. How's that important? That's tough. It's going to be tough for people.
Sure.
It would take me a minute to think about those things.
Yeah.
Well, and again, to give yourself grace, like what you write down right now, like we're not writing that in stone.
Right.
It's all a testing. Like we were talking before we started about like energy. The longer you dial in to yourself regularly, the more everything starts to get clear. And we all spend so much time, whether it's in our business, we get stuck in the chaos, and we lose the ability to communicate with ourselves. So finding a quiet moment, like literally every day, for me, it's first thing in the morning over a cup of coffee. I have a journal, and I write down yesterday's wins, and when I'm done with that, I write down today's gratitude. And I literally do it every day, like without fail. And what it does, like I'm in the middle of like a 3-week stretch that's been pretty tough, like some sickness at home, like the kids, all that kind of stuff. Work's been challenging. And if we don't talk to ourselves, it's easy to be like, Jesus, when is this gonna end? This is awful. And now all of a sudden that talk brings you over here. Where if every morning you're like, well, how did I win yesterday?
Yep.
You actually start to look at the difficulties and thank yourself for them. You're like, holy shit, I'm a badass because yesterday sucked. And I still made time to tuck my kids in and read a book to them.
Right.
Or vice versa. And then today's gratitude is literally like being thankful. Like we're in America. We're recording a podcast on a cell phone. Like, what do we have to bitch about?
For sure.
We're so out of touch. And so I just find all these things kind of like round into like keeping in touch with yourself so that today I wrote this down, I thought it was important. I went with it for a while. You know what? I don't give a shit about that. And being able to pivot forever.
Yeah.
Like, the only finish line is the hole in the ground.
Yeah.
And you can adjust whatever you want until you get there,
Well, and something you said made me think of when we had Brooke on, and she talked about one of her athletes came in and her athlete had been going through, a rough patch. And as a coach, you obviously have to, especially now, you have to be more empathetic than ever, right? As a coach with especially college athletes. And her athlete came in, and it was a week after they had their first conversation. And she came in and kind of had that mentality of like, when is this going to end? And Brooke told her, she's like, well, you sound way better than you did last week. And just that little, you sound better, she was like, you're right.
Yeah.
I do. And like, for her, it was having Brooke, that outside force. But if she had sat down and wrote down like each day, wins from that day, she might have realized it herself.
Right.
Or whatever it is. However you have to go about doing it for yourself, but like having something like that where you can write down, the good things that happened the day before and what you're grateful for going into the next day. If you are going through like a lot of struggles, like that's gonna help you because you're gonna see the little things that you don't see when you're going through that bad situation.
How'd you get yourself to this place? Obviously, you didn't wake up one day and go, oh, the 5 F's is how I'm going to live. Like, did you have role models, reading? Did you go through some stuff and therapy helped you? Like, how did you put yourself in a place where you can have this perspective and organization?
I'm going to be 40 in November. So first of all, I'm old. So I've had a little bit of experience. But it was about 10 years ago. Like I said, the book, The Compound Effect, I go back and read it now and it seems so basic. But for me, at that point in my life, it was that aha. And literally, like I talk about, like it's been a calibration for 10 years. And so I went up here, like I just started, I'm always reading a book. And then I'm always listening to a podcast. And then I'm always talking to other, people that are winning or doing things I want to do or whatever the case is. So over time, it just sort of evolved naturally. I've done a lot of things in the last 10 years that didn't work for me. And just for whatever reason, writing is how I talk to myself. And I started doing that a handful of years ago, and it's just evolved into what it is now.
Have you ever read the book Mindset?
I have it on my shelf, but I actually haven't read it yet.
One of my clients has been telling me like I need to read it, and he said it's a really good read. It's got a lot of good like stories, especially like sports references, business references, and it's like fixed mindset versus I forget what the other mindset is, but everything that he's been telling me about it.
Yeah.
Like
Well, you're open-minded or you're closed-minded.
right?
Yeah.
And it talks like when he talks about some of the athletes like Patrick Ewing, like being fixed-minded and like everything that he did up until the point when he came to the Knicks, like he did it a certain way and he never broke away from that.
Right.
And that's why he never won a
He
championship.
hit a ceiling.
Whereas where Michael Jordan,
Yep.
yes, he was stubborn as fuck, but
Yep.
like he was willing to adapt and change and do certain things. Like
Absolutely.
there were certain things that he wasn't willing to change.
Right.
But there were certain things that he was to adapt his game, like when he came out of retirement and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
that's why he won so much.
For sure.
And
Well, every year he puts something else into his repertoire.
Right.
Like early on, like he's just going to go dunk on you.
yeah.
Right.
He has no mid-range game.
No.
And then over time, like all of a sudden, holy shit, like where did that come? That's not fair.
Right.
Right? That the best basketball player in the world after every offseason comes back with
Right.
something else to
It's
beat
like
you with.
watching LeBron right now, I'm like, you're 37. Stop.
Yeah.
Just stop.
Right. Yeah.
Tom
Right.
Brady, stop.
But we can all do that in
Yeah.
our lives, and that's why I love sports, and that's why I love, and there's so many parallels between, business, the gym, sports, coaching, like all that stuff. Like, it all starts in the same place. It's right there.
Yeah.
Like that's literally that 6 inches between your ears drives everything.
But it takes a lot of self-reflection to get there, and just being around the right people growing up, which isn't your choice. You're around
Yeah.
your family and these people that live by
Sure.
you, and that's all you can. Like, I'm fortunate growing up around my dad, who was just a workhorse. Like, I think back, and like he was a state trooper full time and had a painting company.
Yep.
And still, I don't think at times now it's like Dad wasn't there. He was there. I mean, he had to
Right.
work through some holidays,
Sure.
but he got to games. He coached us.
Yeah.
So it's like being around somebody who's working like that.
Yeah.
And then I started painting for him when I was like 13 years old against these college guys who are fucking workhorses.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is
You got to keep up.
this is what you got to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to listen to them talk about sex and they're drinking at college and keep up.
Yeah.
But in all good fun. It's like the nature and nurture debate. It's
Yeah,
like,
man. And I think, your dad was an entrepreneur. He had to figure it out every day. My dad played a lot more defense, and it worked. Like, he's good, like, but his approach to things and my approach to things aren't the same. But what he did, like, he did show up for me all the time. He was always there. He was always available. We were always talking. Like, it always gave me that honest, that honest perspective that when he was no longer in the house, I had to start doing it for myself.
Right.
Like, when I was, there's stuff you look back at, and people have real challenges in their lives that make or break them. And then some of us have stuff that maybe doesn't seem like it is up to par with some of the challenges other people had. But I have a story that when I was in the 8th grade, I was the 6th man on our basketball team, as I should have been. I was a late bloomer. I just wasn't physically gifted. And the reason the story is relevant is because my basketball coach was in my dad's wedding. And we went and played a tournament, and the Sunday night championship game, I didn't play at all. We played the starters the whole game. We won. In the van ride home, this was like before the school bus. I was young enough that I was in the car with my dad. I cried the whole fucking way home. He didn't say a word to me. The next day after school, I'm out shooting hoops in the driveway, and he comes out and he's like, "It's pretty rough last night, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, you're going to be in high school next year, and that's what it is. So, like, decide right now if you want that to be your career or if you want to do something about it." And he walked back in the house. And he never called his buddy who was my coach, like, none of that shit. And literally, I can still point back to that pivotal moment in my life as a lesson that was like, oh, and then I went on to have a
like the
pretty good
aha
career.
moment.
But yeah, like, so when you talk about who you grew up around and all that, yeah, I'm blessed that I had those kind of conversations with my father. And, I think you see it the other way, where some people come from really, really shitty spots, and that galvanizes them to go. So I think there's a lot of nuance to it, and I don't think it's one way or the other. Like, it still comes down to you being able to take whatever you've
Right.
pulled out of your life and doing something with it.
And it comes down to circumstance too. Like, just because, this person was born into this circumstance that was way tougher than yours doesn't mean that, like, what you went through and what you were feeling in that moment with
Right.
like your dad and like after that game isn't any less than what
Right.
they went
Sure.
through. That was the moment of your life that was like, fuck.
An aha.
Yeah. And like other people have it and it's something maybe that you couldn't even imagine would have
Sure.
been. And then
Yeah.
other people have it and it's on the other end.
Yeah.
That, like, you were like, well, that doesn't seem that bad, but like in their mind it was.
Right.
And
100%.
that's, again, like the empathy side of things of life, but then also just understanding, like, everybody has that moment in life that's like, aha.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Or
hopefully.
not.
Or not.
Yeah.
Or not.
Yeah.
Right. That's a tough part about working with kids now, is this blend where you need to be empathetic, but you also don't want to make somebody soft, and you want them to be able to
I was
work
just
through
about
their
to ask you that.
problems.
Like, as a coach, how do you know when to be hard on somebody and when to be like, it's okay? What if it's not okay?
It's building that relationship with the person, so you really know what they're going through. You know what their family situation is like. You know as much as you can about what their state of mind is like, if they have anxiety, if they have depression. You need to build that relationship, so then you can either have a tough conversation or you know what direction to go.
You learn the buttons to push.
You learn the buttons to push.
Right.
But you got to be careful, because you don't want to push a wrong button with the kid, because you don't want to...
You can't unpush it.
You can't unpush it, and you don't want to have somebody who, may be going through a really tough time at home, and then you go, I'm going to fucking push you today, and they're, you don't want that. So it's really all about that relationship.
It's tough.
Well, and I feel like a lot of that, especially on a day-to-day basis, just comes from the time they walk in the door.
Yeah.
The time they walk in the door, like, the first conversation that I think all of us have with them is like, how you doing? How was your day? What's going on today?
Mm-hmm.
Feel that energy.
Like, those are and figure out, okay, can I push those buttons today? Can I not push those buttons?
And we have, just after the initial onboarding, which it's a lot, before we even talk about exercises and programming, we talk about relationships and building rapport.
Sure. Yeah.
But we have just as many meetings about, hey, so-and-so just told me they're going through this at home. This happened. They said this doctor's appointment. We have just as many meetings about going over those things, so we know people's state of mind.
We just talked the other day about one of our kids going through some tough stuff with college, and it was just like one of those things, like he's trying to figure out where he should go, what he should do, all this other stuff. Like, he's not getting into the schools he wanted to, and in the grand scheme of things, like, having those conversations, and like I just said to Mike, I was like, hey, I had a conversation with this kid, and I just want you to know, like, if you get a chance to talk to him, maybe figure out where he's sitting at too, so you can understand like where he's coming from, because that's a lot of my favorite conversations is with like the juniors and seniors that are trying to figure out what to do for college.
You're
because
transitioning
it's like
from being
they're
a kid to a
transitioning
man,
from being a kid to being like an adult, and it's like, I want to help you cut out the bullshit that you don't need, and like I give you a shortcut. And that's what I try to tell these kids. I'm like, I'm trying to give you a shortcut in any way, shape, or form, whether it's gym, choosing college and high school, whatever it is. And like, obviously not a shortcut in the sense that like you're cheating the system, but like a shortcut, and like you don't have to make the same mistake I did.
Yeah. How do you figure it out faster?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it's so tough with kids. Like,
Especially now.
Like, yeah. And to your point, like, I think we can all think back. Like, you still right now can think about somebody, whether it was a peer or a coach or a teacher that said something to you, that you can still draw on right now, and it affected you either in a good way or a bad way. And I promise you, most of the things that pop up in your head, they don't remember ever saying to you.
Right.
So you're in that position where it's like, that could live with them forever, and you didn't even know. Like, you just went, back about your day.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
But that's where we're fortunate in terms of how we run our business, is that outside of kids coming here, we have kids from all different schools, Shem, Boston Spa, Burn Hill, Stillwater, Mechanical, and they all come in and work out together. For the majority of them, all of their other workouts are taking place with their school team. Now, these coaches may have bias towards who they want on the team. They may feel this external pressure for I have to go to these things or I won't make the team. So here's almost become this place where it's like, I could just be myself and get a workout and better myself without this worry for, am I going to make the team? What's the coach think of me? Just this like bullshit adult bias that exists.
Just come do the work.
Just come do the work.
Yeah.
Come work out, come have fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
But these bad coaches that you see are like coaches who aren't self-aware and haven't done work for themselves.
Or it's about them.
Right.
I had a basketball coach. I don't think he'll ever hear this, so I'll say it. But like, he was brutal on all of us, and it was like, psychologically, every kid that played for him had a story. Like, if you happen to be the one kid on his team that he favored, like, maybe you have a different opinion of him. Right. But like 95% of the kids from all generations, like, my dad had an experience with him. And it's just like, to your point, how do you be so, how do you lack self-awareness? But at some point, it's not even about self-awareness. It's about your ego. Right. And when it's about you on the sideline, like, guess what, dude? No one gives a shit. They're here for the kids. Right? Like, what's this about?
But youth sports has become not about the kids. It's about the adults' ego and the money. which I get it. People have businesses, they got to make money, but you can't do it at a detriment to setting the kids up for success.
Well, we just saw, I said earlier I was doing like the speed and agility thing because we have the time, and it's through Lee Taft, and we just saw on Instagram he was blasting AAU, and youth sports, and one of the things that stuck out to me and like bigger than ever is there's been an 8% drop in youth sports, competitive sports.
Over how
participation?
What kind of period?
I don't know what the period.
You'd have to pull it. You have to pull it up.
I'd have to pull it up, but like in the grand scheme, like it was an 8% drop over a certain amount of time, I believe. I don't know if he even specified the amount of time.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's because it's become so monetized, and you're not worried about the kid just going out there and having fun and playing the game. And like you got this kid's parents, like one of the things he's like, this kid, he heard a parent talking about spending $5,000 to get their family to go to this AAU tournament, and he's like, I'm watching this AAU tournament and it's watching CYO rec basically.
Yeah.
Like that's not the kids that should be going and spending like, if you're not the absolute best in your county or your town or whatever, like why are you doing that? Go play a rec league, have fun, enjoy it, learn the movements, learn the game, and then
learn the lessons that come from the game.
Right, exactly. Right. I had a conversation today with one of our PTs about like, when we grew up, like there was rec CYO, there was travel CYO. There wasn't really AAU. There was some, but not a lot. Yeah. But it was rec CYO, travel CYO, and most kids played rec, and a few kids played travel. And the travel that you played, you went maybe 30 minutes away.
Yeah,
maybe.
But also, I think when I was a kid, you knew before tryouts who was making the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I hear what you're saying, and I think that definitely plays a part in it. Like the monetization and everything's organized, and like that's a piece of it. And back to comparison, like if I'm not on that team, I'm not going to get to play next year. Mm-hmm. If I don't go to this workout, I'm not going to, like, there's a lot of truth to that.
Right.
And then I also think, to touch on how sports is a microcosm of society, the whole like participation trophy thing and everybody deserves to be here. And like, we're taking the lessons out of sports.
Right.
Because when all of a sudden you're 40 years old and you have a business to run, like nobody gives a shit. Like, are you going to give them a better experience? Are you better than your competition?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would much rather learn that lesson at 12 years old in the batter's box
than 40
when I'm like, oh shit, I just lost all my entire life savings on a business because I thought I deserved it.
That 8% thing was over the last decade.
Yeah.
So just in the last 10 years, 8% drop in youth children playing competitive sports because it's driven them away due to the broken model of pay to play.
Yeah. Well, it's everything.
Yeah. I mean, he talks about little things like creating like 6-week AAU programs instead of like this 6-month long AAU thing. Like it's a 6-week, break it down, division 1, 2, 3, division, certain divisions go farther.
But if you go in 6 months, you can't even play other sports.
That's it.
And that's what he talks about is like, it allows doing a 6-week AAU program would allow them to play a spring sport as opposed to, now they can't.
Like, I don't know, when do you specialize? Like, you guys are way in it more than I am, but when I was a kid, there wasn't as much of that.
No.
And we used to go play, like, there was a hoop down, at the playground, and we would show up every Tuesday and every Friday at the same time and beat the hell out of each other.
I think up to a certain age, I don't know what the age is, probably somewhere in the middle of high school or late middle school, unstructured play is probably more valuable. You always need to work on skills and techniques, but now you're playing without this adult constraint.
Yeah.
And now you have to work through problems with your peers.
Right. Yeah.
Those
have you ever seen
huge.
those teams that just have this synergy that you're just like, wow,
we
like
played
they
on one.
feel the game.
Yeah.
Our senior year baseball team, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we could have ran a practice without our coaches.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you should.
And legitimately could have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we all grew up going to the town rec together and playing and Little League and in each other's backyards.
Yeah.
And it got built just as much there as it did at practices, maybe even more.
Yeah, for sure. And when I got done college, I played men's league basketball and I was in Portland, Maine, and so there's a lot of Division 1, 2, and 3 colleges around there. Mm-hmm. And so the men's league was really competitive. And it is literally the best time I've ever had playing sports, but especially playing basketball, because like it sorts itself out.
Yeah.
Right.
You got 9 guys on your team, you got 5 spots on the court. As the game unfolds, like, we're not dumb. We know who should be in the game. We know who should be taking the shot.
Right.
We know who's hot and who's not.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the feel all just comes from playing with each other over time.
Yeah.
Like, Nobody can coach that.
Right.
And if you spend all your time in AAU and in organized sports, you never develop that, like, you know.
And that field translates over into the business world. So you could probably relate here. We're out on the coaching floor. It's me, Paul, Dan, and let's say it's Connor. So we're our full staff, all 4 coaches on the floor. We got a full gym. There's probably not many moments where, like, Paul, go coach that. Dan, go do that.
Right.
We know where to be.
Yeah.
We know who we got to be with.
Yep.
We know how to move about the gym.
Right.
But
And how does that translate into everything? Like, if you're always waiting to be told, like, okay, I got the ball at the top of the key, I got to pass it over here.
right.
Like, now you bring that out into your life, and we all sit around waiting to be told what to do next.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think, you know, just going back to it, like, it's all comes back to, like, what we learned, like, at least the 3 of us, what we learned through sport.
Right.
And, you know, it all relates back to just all of that kind of stuff and the disciplines and how that we subconsciously use it
Right.
in our
But
business life.
This is where we'll go there now. This is where I think a big piece people got into trouble during COVID, is they're waiting to be told
What
what
to
to do
Or what they can't
or
do.
what they can do and they can't do. And this is where, I mean, I've seen numbers where upwards of 30 to 40% of gyms closed during COVID.
Yeah.
And either you had poor structure beforehand and you really didn't have the reserve money beforehand to withstand a couple months like this.
Yeah.
But it's also people who just folded and didn't know how to keep the train moving during a fucking really hard time.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a
Right.
really tough time. Like, how were you guys during that when this all hit?
So we were fortunate, and I hate to even use their words, but we were deemed essential.
I remember you telling us this.
I don't like that, because I don't believe that my kid's plate is any more essential than yours. So my first, like, early on, I was scared, because everybody was. I had no idea.
We didn't know what this
no
was,
idea
man.
what this was. So how I feel about it now and how I felt about it then, it's 180. But at the time, I was grateful that, like, we could keep going. Like, all our employees went home, so we would stagger. Like, I'd be there in the morning, and then somebody else. You know, we were limited in who could be in the store and stuff like that. We fortunately we had built an online store the year before, so you could actually buy paint. We put it out the back door. You could come by and get it. So, like, our revenue was way down for the first 2 months. But then after that, because everybody's strapped at home, like, we actually exploded. It probably fast forwarded us like 5 years in the retail side of things. We'd always done well with contractors, but retail became aware of us because they had nothing to do. So they were painting at home, you know, doing home projects and
That's what I
things
was
like
gonna say.
that.
Everybody was doing stuff at home,
Yeah.
home projects, different things like that.
So I'm grateful for that. And, you know, I also, through that period of time, like, I never went home. I didn't get the 2 weeks off. I got none of that. So my perspective was literally out in it the whole time. Where a lot of people that I have challenging conversations with went home for 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 2 years, whatever it is, like, and they watched it all happen on TV. We're not living in the same world. We don't have the same opinions of how it all went. And I won't go there, because that's not going to be productive. But what it did for me is it made me realize a couple things. You know, I'm a patriot. Like, I love America for what it's supposed to be. I'm not going to sit here and say, like, you know, I look at America like us, right? When I was 20, I did some dumb shit that I don't want to relive, but that experience made me who I am now. I think we've lost our ability to give America, the country, that same kind of grace, where it's like, yeah, we did some fucked up shit. Like, nobody's going to argue that. But if we try to just, like, erase all that, we lose the ability to learn from that and continue to grow. So I've always looked at America as, like, we're free, we're free, we're free. And having this, like, perspective that that's just ingrained in who we are. So when all that went down, I was like, oh shit, like, are we? Is there an illusion of freedom? Like, how can they tell you that you have to go home?
Right.
If you decide that you should go home because you've looked at some information and decided it's safer for you to go home, or it's safer for you to make this decision, back to personal responsibility, cool. And I wish that's how the whole thing was handled from the get-go. But to me, it made me realize, like, shit, my focus now, even in my business and my personal life, is not on, like, growing this business to have a nice life and all that stuff is cool, but, like, I want to be sovereign. I want to be healthy so that these things aren't as scary to me. I want to be financially cool so like I don't have to rely on somebody else. I want to be mentally free of like the shack. Like I want to be sovereign.
Right.
Well, it comes down to that fourth pillar.
And most people aren't that. And
Right.
this experience has really made it glaring to me as to what's actually important. And when I said it was a blessing earlier, that's why. Because without this like, hey everybody, you know, this isn't what you thought it was. Like, I don't think we get to work into the position that we're in.
Right.
We're in now.
Well,
Right.
and
You know,
I love the blessing thing because I touched on it earlier, but between getting the opportunity to work here with Mike, who I've known for 25 years, basically, at this point, I also got the opportunity. I have an apartment with my best friend from when I was 5 years old,
yeah,
who I probably hadn't really hung out with much in 3 years because of living in New York.
sure.
But I have that. I got a great job here, and I have created more connections here than I could ever have imagined. So,
Yeah.
like, you talked about those blessings and being able to, go from how you felt about it at the beginning, 180 now. I think we all kind of have different feelings about how we
Sure.
felt about it at the beginning,
Yeah.
and whatnot. But like, I think of myself with one of my roommates I lived with in New York. First thing I did was, okay, I'm going to get my clients all set up with at-home workouts, all the ones that
Yeah.
want to do it.
Sure.
All the ones that want to do at-home workouts, I'm going to get them set up. He went the route of, I'm going to make a website and do all this other fancy shit behind the scenes rather than worry about the people. And I think for you
That's
guys,
huge.
you went, I'm going to worry about the people.
Yep.
I'm going to worry about the people that you work
Yeah.
with and all that. And then
Yeah.
everything else
And
will
your
fall in line.
families and everything
Right.
else. yeah.
Everything else falls in the line. And that's, for me, that's kind of what happened. I did that. I've worried about the people first and the business part of it
Yeah.
second.
Well, and now that's rolled. Like we live in the supply chain, and I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but the supply chain is
Shit.
brutal. And so, it's like everything else. How do you look at it, and how do you what's your choice going to be?
Right.
Like, this is hard, so I have an excuse. Like right now, losers do loser shit. Well, it is now acceptable to use every excuse you want.
Right.
Can't help you. Don't
Right.
have it.
Right.
Don't know. And everybody's happy with that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, you guys are in deep shit. And we're going to stand on the gas because the whole time that you're at home telling everybody you can't help them, I will.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's about leadership, right? Like, if I can't help you and you can't help him and he can't help you, who leads?
Yeah.
Are we all going to go hide and then come out and hope that we all survived whatever's going on? Or are you going to say, plan A is dead, I'm working on plan B, I already have an idea of what plan C might be, and I'm
Right.
already thinking about plan D? Because from a business standpoint, all these other business owners and all these other people are in the same boat we are.
Right.
Like, oh shit. And if you can be the one that takes something off their to-do list and goes and gets it done, and they don't have to spend all their time running it around, like, you're their guy.
Yeah.
And so there's huge, massive opportunity to not be, the big box gym, to not be the big box store with a bunch of people that don't, an organization with no soul.
Right.
Like, small business and small gyms are still about, to your point, like, the people.
It's all about the
It's
people.
alive, dude. Like,
That's
these
what my-
businesses are alive.
And that's what, here, and I think anybody that gets into fitness industry or coaching
Yeah.
industry, like, the first thing you need to understand is, like, it's about the people. Whether
Right.
you're doing youth sports, which we talked about,
Yeah.
you're doing professional sports, college sports, you're coaching at a gym like we are.
Yeah, but
it's about the people.
If you're running a paint and hardware store,
it's about
if
people.
you're running a hair salon, it's about the people and it's about trust. And
Right.
especially now, it's about trust.
Trust.
And
Trust is
results that come from those relationships.
Right.
Right. If I come to you guys and this is all nice and fancy, and I'm actually honestly trying to
Well,
put
thank
in
you. I
the
didn't
work,
think it was that fancy.
and I'm not getting results.
Yeah.
Like, I don't trust you.
Right.
Where so all of this kind of comes together, and I think that we're in an awesome time where, like, the pretenders are gonna go away, and if we can work through this, and we're getting more at bats. Like, I got a couple of vendors that come and work with us, and I'm always talking about at bats. Just get me an at bat, and I'm not in the batter's box to try to smash everything out of the park. Like, if I walk into the shop and it's just like, hey, I sell this and I know you use that. Like, I know you like to drink Coca-Cola, but I sell Pepsi. Like, all these things, like, nobody wants to talk to you. But if you just listen to people and then they tell you what they might need help with, that's your at bat.
Right.
I'm going to focus on that. And if I can solve that one thing, I can get on first. Like, I'm going to get another at bat.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to get another at bat. And then pretty soon, like, I'm batting cleanup.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's funny you bring that up because, like, when I think about my time when I worked in retail, because I worked at Reebok and GNC, and I did do I left GNC for a, better paying job in retail I left Reebok for a better paying job in retail for Staples. And then I was like, fuck that. And went to GNC because that was more down my alley. But, like, that batter's box that you just talked about, that at bat, like, that person will come to me, I want this. Okay. X, Y, and Z. I'd ask them, like, a couple questions. And then I'd take them, okay, I'm going to go over here. Okay, I need this too. Then it's like, by developing that relationship, I got 5 at bats with that one person.
But if you didn't ask the question and you didn't take them towards what they needed to solve the problem they wanted, and you were just like, hey, we're having a special. I'm like, no one gives a shit about your special. Like, they have a problem.
You've probably been in the GNC before.
Yeah.
They try to sell you everything in the book. Whereas, like, when somebody came into GNC for me, it was like, okay, how can I help you rather than like, I'm just going to sell you X, Y, and Z. Like, how can I help you like with what you actually are coming in here for?
100%.
Because then, guess what? Next month, they come back and they buy the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
And then they buy the same thing next month.
Yeah.
And it comes back every single month. Yeah. And, like, that's the one thing I missed about when I worked at GNC up here compared to when I lived in New York. Like, New York was much more corporate.
Yep.
When I was up here, it was much more, I can run my store how I think it should be run. Right. And if I do the numbers, I do the numbers.
Yeah, you take care of people, they get results, you get paid. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not that difficult.
No.
When you guys opened up, did you know that you wanted to make, like, customer experience a priority? Because I don't think many, I guess people that own, a paint store or hardware store really think about the customer experience, or maybe I'm wrong. Because I sensed that right when I came in.
Yeah. I can't really speak to how I'm confused a lot of times when I go into places and it seems like I'm annoying to them. It's like, if we're all annoying and we all go away, like, you're fucked. Hello. Secret for you. The money's in my pocket right now, right? Like,
you need my money.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were always aware of that, but I think we'd all had success in our previous careers, especially when we were, and I won't speak for all the other guys, but, like, I was successful in every spot I was in because I made it about taking care of those people. Mm-hmm. And when it got to the point, like, what actually pushed me out is when it got to the point where more often than not, I'm standing in front of a customer and I'm the punching bag because he's having a bad experience and there's not shit I can do about it.
That's the worst feeling.
I just have to sit there and be like, well, they're telling me, and you start, you're a dancing monkey at this point, right? You're just there to entertain them in order to get it to, like, move along. And as soon as I started to feel that, like, that's what kind of opened up my mind to, like, I'd be on my way home and everybody driving through the intersection, like, all these people are doing something different. I don't have to stay. And it just started opening my mind to, like, other opportunities. But when we started this, like, we just knew, like, that's where we're going to win. Go anywhere, not even just paint. Go to any retail place or restaurant or anywhere that there's a customer experience and tell me how many people are doing it right. Mm-hmm. How often do you leave with a good experience versus how many horror stories do we have?
Right.
Like, just do the right thing for people, and you don't have to really reinvent the wheel.
It's very true.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's like a priority on what we place in here.
Yeah.
It's like customer experience.
Yeah,
we talk about.
Well, how are you different? How else are you different?
Right.
Planet Fitness has dumbbells and barbells. Right. Cool.
$10 a month.
And there is a certain, like, you have to have an ego to start your own business because you have to believe enough in yourself. But early on, like, I was always fixated on, like, what's the competition doing? What's this doing? Like, I was kind of, like, obsessed with, like, this is our business. Mm-hmm. This is ours. This is us. Come here because we're different and it's us. And, like, nobody gives a shit. Mrs. Jones wants blue on her wall. Mm-hmm. She doesn't care about my, like, yeah, there's a connection to small business to a degree, but the average person doesn't care about you and your story. They care about theirs. Mm-hmm. So if you try to be the hero in their story, like, it ain't going to jive.
Yeah.
But if you just kind of support them, you're good. So I would come here to work out because you're going to help me reach my goals. And if I go to Planet Fitness, they're going to yell at me for dropping dumbbells. Right?
It's like, you ever read Building a Story Brand?
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, that's from that.
That's what
it's
it is.
Like when you're marketing to people and with people, you're not, I don't know Star Wars. You're Yoda. You're not, what's the other guy?
Yeah.
You're not, what's the main guy? Luke Skywalker. You're the, I don't know.
I don't think
Can we use an example?
I don't think any of us.
I don't know.
Any of us are
Yeah,
Star
I
Wars
don't know.
people.
So
Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan. I don't
Come
know.
on.
You're the guide. You're not the main character.
Yes.
They're,
You're
the client
Mr.
is-
Miyagi.
Yeah, I read that
they're-
book that first year.
Yeah, they're Danielson. Yes,
Yes.
you're Mr. Miyagi.
You're Mr. Miyagi.
That's
Use
bad.
Karate Kid,
fucking
okay? We
Dan
know-
Jones. Dan Jones would be like, "What the fuck? You're butchering Star Wars, Star
Dan's just
Trek,
be so
or whatever."
disappointed right now.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dan Jones. But yeah, you're the guide. You're not the all-star.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, as long as you put that into perspective, like a couple of the questions are like, how much thought do you put into it? Like, I think at the end of the day, if you just do the right things for the person in front of you,
Right.
like they're gonna bring somebody to you. One becomes two, becomes four, becomes eight, indefinitely.
I mean, I
You know?
see that here. Just in, I've been here now just over a year and a half now.
Yeah.
Going on a year and a half.
Yep.
And just in the relationships I know Mike and Dan have built in their first year of being back, like Mike's first year of being back here and whatnot. And then we had Pat on, and just listening to that, and then the relationship he built with you, it's just like,
Yep.
it all stems from that. You
Right.
know? So,
And the coolest thing about it is he started it and he had to build relationships that garnered enough attention and enough revenue to then allow you an opportunity to join. So when you ask, like, how did I experience the change from corporate to this and how do I look at it? Like, to me, I want to be the alternative for everyone. I don't want to be the alternative just for the customer. I want to be the like that Home Depot employee. Like, I want to be their alternative too, because I want us to be able to create a culture where like both sides of the counter are in a better place when they're with us, and they're better for us being there. Because ultimately, to me, that's how you have a bigger impact. It's not just about cans of paint and dollars and cents.
well, like, and I was just going to say that, like, if I was 18, 19, 20-year-old right now and I was working for Home Depot, all I'd think about is, like, I'm selling fucking paint,
Yeah.
this, that, and anything.
Right.
Whereas if I'm going and I'm working for a small business or your guys' business or whatever, it's like you care more.
Yeah.
Because you see what you're putting in,
Yeah.
what Mike's putting in,
Sure.
and everything. And it's like, you see all the little things and you're like, fuck, dude. Like,
Yeah, dude.
I actually want to give a shit about
Yeah.
this place.
Well,
Whereas,
and
like,
you-
at Home Depot, you're like, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
The
Well,
corporate
because-
comes in and
Yeah.
they talk shit to me.
Because he cares about you.
Yeah.
Right.
So if like we have kids that work for, I say kids, like early 20s, like we got a couple of rock stars on our team, and it's like, I always think about it this way. If he's and no disrespect to any of these businesses, whatever, but like you go get a job at Home Depot, you go get a job at Panera Bread, like your boss has somebody up their ass. So they're worried about their reports. Did they do this? Did they do that? So they're so focused on like themselves and looking over their own shoulder that they're not present for you. None of us are able to be okay for anybody else until we're okay for ourselves. And so that dynamic just sets you up to fail as a leader, and it's going to give everybody underneath you a bad experience. Where with us, like, we're figuring this out as we go. You've got a certain mindset to be in business. So like you're developing relationships and helping install mindset and culture and all these other things into the people. And then they're going to take over your business for you. Like, they're going to do the right things without the checklist and the training manuals and all that, because you cared about them and how they show up.
Right.
Yeah. I'd like to say there'd be a day that Mike's, able to not be here 14 hours a day, but I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Well, he might not want to.
That's what yeah.
Yeah, that's part of what I've talked about it before, but
He's still here right now.
Yeah.
Listen, this is fun though. This isn't work, man. We're chilling. But so I'm lucky. A lot of this, like, it doesn't feel like work to me.
Right.
And I mean, I talked about building capacity before. Like, I think in sports is where a lot of my work ethic started to develop. But then painting for my dad's painting company, like, you got some long ass days in the summer and you're prepping a house and it's hot. Like, you do that for 10, 12 hours and you come in here and coach for 10 hours. Like, I'm hanging out. This isn't work. This isn't work right now.
Yeah,
That was
this
like
is
when
easy.
I worked with my dad at his shop. I mean, not nearly as much as like you did with your dad, but still, like, changing tires on cars, oil changes left and right. Like, I'm 14, 13 years old. I'm not even supposed to legally be working yet, but I'm like, I wanted to make some money.
Sure.
And I had an opportunity with my dad, so that's what I did. And it's just like you learn those things at such a young age, and it does make a big difference as you get older. I'm seeing those at a young age.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think for sure that's important. Yeah, I think a lot of kids miss out on that now too.
Yeah.
Whether through, just say, like we said, how their coaches are, not going in manual labor is huge. I don't
Manual
want
labor is
to be that guy,
No,
but
well-
like you learn a lot from it.
Well, and that's where all this, like a lot of small business, like a lot of like the fabric of America that everybody talks about was that, you know, like my dad ran a bowling alley when I was a kid. Like he made me, my job was to take a bucket of Zepp cleaner, which is like probably not even legal anymore. And I would have to go out back and clean the machines. Like all the dust on, you've never been in the back of a bowling alley, but
I
it's
have,
like,
but it's fucking
yeah, and I would spend all day just
sounds terrible.
wiping a
Doesn't
machine.
sound like a fun time.
You know, when I wasn't sleeping because he wasn't paying attention, I was cleaning these machines. And it's just like all of these things that suck are good for us.
Yeah.
And that lasts forever. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And I think there's a lot to be gained from that. And it's too bad if kids are missing that these days because a lot of those small businesses are not as available. They've been replaced by bigger jobs. You know, like parents are outsourcing, go to Panera Bread, go to, you know, like let somebody else, you know, give those kids those experience. I just don't think they're getting the same one we did.
Yeah, for sure, in a lot of different ways. Like they're not getting the same experience,
Yeah.
but like when it comes to like
We
that,
sound old.
that grind. You know, it's funny because I was just thinking that in my head. I'm like, I sound like
Back when I was a kid.
sound like my fucking back.
Can we
when I
edit
walked,
all of this out?
when I
this
walked
part?
10, when I walked 10 miles uphill both ways.
Oh man.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny because you think back to like when our parents used to say shit, and now you think about it and you're like, damn, like. But I feel like it's so between technology and everything else now, like it's even more so than like when we grew up, like PlayStation. Like yeah, we had Nintendo and like PlayStation first started coming out, but now it's like you got the fucking metaverse.
The fucking
like,
Oculus scares the shit out of me.
First of all, I'll never get an Oculus
Dude.
because I'll break something.
I want none of any of that.
Me neither,
Yeah.
bro.
Like what go back to people, like so I'm gonna wear these goggles so I don't have to go outside, and then I'm gonna take them off just long enough to order my food that's gonna show up at my door. Like what are we doing?
Yeah.
And all of these things, like again, not to sound old, but like look at society, and we're in a place where like up is down and left is right, and like from the most basic like fact to whatever, it's all crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of it's rooted in these types of experience where we've just lost touch with like the shit that matters,
Well,
dude.
like
you know?
and like I think part of it comes down to what you touched on earlier. Like when you're on social media, are you the scroller?
Yeah.
Or are you the creator?
Right.
Are you on there to like make a difference or put something out there for somebody to see, or are you on there just looking at what everybody else
Yeah.
is doing? And I was gonna say this earlier and it just came back to me, was like I remember, and I've said this like I think a couple times in the gym, I was listening to a podcast and this guy was talking about how we need to embrace social media, and we need to embrace it with our youth and give them something productive to do with it.
Right.
Don't tell them like don't get on it,
Right.
because they're
It's powerful.
they're gonna fucking get on
Right.
it. Like it's gonna happen.
But then you could be like,
But you could be like, okay, you really like my niece, for instance, really loves fucking like Broadway and stuff like that, and she's not really on social media, so she's not really the best example.
Yep.
But like if she was, I'd be like, okay, why don't you start creating dance videos or
Sure.
creating, showing your voice off or whatever, to do something productive for
Yeah.
her. Like
And
it
when
comes
you
down
are
to-
scrolling, what are you scrolling through? Have you cultivated it?
Yeah.
All circling back
because
to energy.
it
like,
does cultivate.
are you watching bullshit?
Right.
Yeah.
Or are you feeding your mind like the right messages from the right
right.
mentors?
Like I think doesn't China, they control TikTok where like kids under a certain age can only see like math or science
Yeah.
or history, which I mean
Yeah.
it's fucking just crazy and as it
Yeah.
is. But if you
Right.
can use it for good things,
Sure.
not saying China's doing good things, but you can use it for good things
versus distractions.
versus distractions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
and I think that's where too many times, and I think again it comes back to what you talked about with like parents sending kids to Panera to learn those lessons, or that corporate store or that other job to learn those lessons. It comes down to like parents sitting down and being like, rather than you just sitting there like this,
Yeah.
like, why are you on your phone? Well, actually, I'm on my phone
Well, because the parent was on their phone.
because you were on your phone, or maybe they
Honestly.
maybe the kid comes back with it and goes, I'm actually on my phone because I'm making a post right now about X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And like, if I had a kid at that and they were to come at me with that, I'd be like,
Yeah.
let me step back.
Yeah.
Let me do your thing.
Right. And
then-
your kid will do that if you set the example.
Yeah.
Like that's really what all this conversation is that we're talking about. Like if you're a coach, if you're a parent, if you're a business leader, like any of those things, like don't overcomplicate it. Just set the example
Lead
for
by
your
example.
kids, for your people, because like that's what they're going to see. That's how they're going to behave, you know? But again, unfortunately, a lot of people are distracted, a lot of people are lost, a lot of people aren't having those conversations with themselves, and so they're not showing up the way that they probably want to.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So working for my dad growing up, like we were only allowed, still only allowed to use Ben Moore. That was it, man. That was the only fucking product.
That's funny.
Purdy brushes.
Yeah.
Ben Moore.
Yep.
That was that.
I almost wore my Serenian Sun shirt today. I almost did, but then it was a little tight, so I was like, I don't
want to be that guy.
Yeah, I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to wear an extra medium.
Yeah. That's funny.
That's what we go with. But like talking to that front, like what makes that product different than a Sherwin-Williams or other products?
Well, I think there's two parts to this answer. The first one is the product in the can. Like Ben Moore is not a publicly traded company, so they are focused on creating the best product, not necessarily the most profitable one. Where all these other public companies, like if they take a nickel worth of value out of every can, they get to keep it for their shareholders. Like I think, this is my personal opinion, somebody may disagree with me, but I think that affects research and development and give a shit about the quality of the product. And then the other piece that I appreciate, and I know it's a huge challenge for them, is that Ben Moore paint is only sold through independent dealerships. So if you're buying a can of Benjamin Moore paint, if it's at an Ace Hardware, a family owns that Ace Hardware. If it's at a Colorize, a family owns that Colorize. So now, like the challenge for Ben Moore is their brand is in everybody's hands. You know, I like to think they put it in our hands, and we're good stewards of that, and we're doing right by them, and we're selling a shitload of paint for them. But if they put it in someone's hand who doesn't give a shit about the customer, is not carrying that banner the right way, like they're kind of susceptible to people having a bad experience with that name. So the fact that like you have to be a massive company to make paint, right? It's an expensive endeavor, you know, resourcing the materials, all that stuff. So you can't be a small business and be in that game. So the way that Benjamin Moore sells through small businesses just allows them to connect to the customer and to the painter in my opinion, in a more natural way, because they're not a $16 billion corporation that doesn't understand the fact that you can't pay your bill right now because we're looking at the same snowbank. Where like we have the same challenges as all of our customers. So when we have conversations, instead of sitting across the table and like fighting it out, we slide the chair around and we sit next to them and say like, all right, how do we get through this so that we can partner in our businesses, as opposed to you just being
You're not doing a negotiation. You want to be a partner.
Yeah, I don't want customers. I want partners.
Right. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is exactly probably why you guys are so successful. Like,
Yeah.
and why they've been successful, those, because they're almost like I mean, obviously they're bigger than a small business, but they're like a small business in the big business section, kind of, because they're doing a lot of small business things in an area where it's very fucking tough to do that.
Yeah.
Like they obviously give a shit about you guys, and like other people that they give to, and like when he brought up like Ace Hardware, the first thing I thought of was fucking Chatham Ace Hardware.
Yeah, family owned.
But that was
company.
family owned.
Yeah.
Like it was family owned, and like they had all that shit, and it was like I think back on that, and I was like, that makes fucking sense.
Yeah.
Like
They have to give a shit.
And they did give a shit.
A lot of those businesses become lifestyle businesses, so they get to a point where they don't have to give a shit as much. And then you start to watch, like you go into those markets, and that's why they struggle. That's why if the corporations can beat you, it's because you're not exploiting the fact that you can care more than they do. Right? You know, that's my observation of other dealers in the marketplace. If you just care, like we have an advantage because we are connected to the community in ways these corporations are not.
Yeah,
you know?
that makes
Absolutely.
sense. It's like the gym sense, like the higher quality, higher price point gyms and services, they're going to stay and keep rolling. And then you have the bottom, the lower price point gyms are going to stay too. And it's the middle that doesn't give a good service, and is that middle price that is going to get, I think, over time. Then COVID's pushed it. But
I was having a conversation with one of my best friends over the weekend. We were out to breakfast, and we were talking about gyms, and he was saying like, you know, I don't want to spend X amount on a gym unless I'm getting like this experience. And I was like, dude, I completely understand it. And I was like, but I'm willing to spend that much if I'm going to get that. And like, you know, obviously everybody's got a different financial status and whatnot. And I was like, I'm willing to spend $100 on a gym if I know what I'm going to get at an experience.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to I won't spend $10 on a fucking gym if think it's going to get a shitty experience.
Right.
Like I don't like to keep bringing up like Planet Fitness. So here, I'll bring up Retro Fitness. Retro Fitness in Pittsfield, right? When I first started there, was a great gym. But they never invested in the gym or the people in the fucking gym.
Yep.
And then COVID hit and they got fucked. And then they literally closed 9 days ago.
For good.
For good.
Yeah.
Closed for good.
Yeah.
And they weren't getting the members because they weren't putting back into the gym what the members were putting into the gym.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
I think about like the culture that was there when I worked there, and it was amazing. But the gym itself was like, it was decent, but the culture was great. And it wasn't because of the owners there. The owners were never fucking, I couldn't even tell you what the owners looked like.
Yeah, right.
And it's all about that, like, you got to, if people are putting into the business, you got to put into the people.
Right. And you got to understand what kind of value your customer is looking for.
Right.
Because we all have a different, value exchange.
Right.
Like you said, you want to spend $100, maybe I don't, maybe I can't. Like, we're all going to do the math in our heads to decide, is this experience worth it for me?
Right.
And if you lose touch with that, you're susceptible to going away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's real. Yeah, we've touched on a lot here. What role does like fitness play for you in your life? I know, we talked about it with like your 5Fs and with Calibrated Mindset, but
I'm a better person when it's a part of my life, I think because I grew up an athlete, like no matter how long your school day was, no matter how many tests you had, like you got practice at 3 o'clock.
Always.
Like put your cleats on and go. Like nobody cares.
Lace them up.
Yeah. And so if I go too many days in a row without sweating, like I'm just not a good person. So, I think there's a lot to be gained in those trials and tribulations, whether you're in a group class pushing yourself against other people or you're, in your garage at home just, lifting weights at 5 o'clock in the morning. Like you're having conversations with yourself that are forging you into somebody else completely. It's not just physical. That's just a bonus.
It is. It's definitely, I think, for me even now more than ever, it's more mental than physical. Going through tearing my Achilles, like the fact that, Mike hooked me up with a guy he worked with, Tony Gentlecore. Shout out Tony. He did a workshop with us, but he hooked me up with him, and then I started following his Instagram, and 3 days post-surgery, I was up doing workouts.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because I saw what he was able to do 3 days, and I was like, you know what, if he can do it, I'm like, he's fucking 10 years older than me. I'm like, why can't I?
For sure.
And so I just started doing stuff, and I feel like the fact that I did that, one, it helped me stay mentally sane throughout it because it was my right foot. I couldn't drive anywhere. I was losing my fucking shit.
That's awful.
It was worse than COVID quarantine because at least in COVID quarantine, I could walk somewhere, I could drive somewhere, I could go do. I couldn't go anywhere without somebody else because I physically couldn't walk.
Yeah.
Right. So it was worse than that for me. But the fact that like I could work out at home. I came in here at least once a week. Because that helped me keep me sane, seeing all the people in here coming in and getting a good workout in. Like it's become more of a mental thing for me than it is even physical. The physical side is the secondary for me.
Yeah.
The mental side of it is like when I get a workout in at our 12 o'clock hour, I know, okay, I'm going to come in from 2 to fucking 8 or 2 to 7 or 2 to 6, whatever we got the day is, and I'm going to be able to fucking be an all-star those hours.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it too, like what do they say? When you have your health, you want everything. When you don't, you want one thing, right? So when you're laid up, like the only thing you can think about is the fact you can't do anything. So if you put it on a longer timeline and you realize like there will come a time in your life when you're 70 years old and you can't get around without help. Like if I can take care of myself from now until then, maybe that doesn't hit me till I'm 80 and I get 10 more years of quality life. Like having that kind of perspective, I think is important. And I think it's the easiest thing to stop doing for yourself because like it sucks a lot of times. Like when you're actually in the workout,
it's fucking not fun.
It's not fun. The feeling you get after is the best feeling you're going to have all day. But I think it's the easiest thing not to do. And, I don't ever want to be the person that's like wealthy and out of shape.
Yeah.
Right.
Or like ripped and broke.
Right.
Like I want all of it. And I think the messaging that's thrown at us is like, it's okay to not. Like, you're an asshole if you're this or that, or you're driven, or like, no, like that's wrong. Like we're put here to win. Like we're wired to win and to progress and to be better. And to me, fitness is a part of that. Like it all ties together.
I agree. Well, it's like with your calibrated mindset. It's like, what are all these pieces that are important to me?
Right.
And you have your physical health, and you have your spirituality, and you have your emotional health, and you have your relationships. All these things are so important, and it's tough to keep them all ebbing and flowing
It's like herding cats. You
That's
just
it.
gotta keep moving
That's
them.
it. Spinning plates,
You know?
it's herding cats. And
Is Linc a cat guy? Is that what we just figured out? Are you a cat guy?
I'm a dog guy, so
Okay. Just
I'm
making
like
sure.
everybody else. So I have 2 cats, and it's because
So he's like Dan Johnson.
well, when Kara and I met, and then we got an apartment, like she wanted a cat, and I was at a point in the relationship where I'm just saying yes to everything.
Yeah.
So now we have 2 cats and a dog, and
At least you have a dog though.
2
so.
kids, and now
You know.
it's all out of control.
Dan started out with a dog, and then one day he became a cat dad, and we gave him shit for probably like a month.
Yeah, I don't
least.
dislike my cats, but like,
You like your dog better.
yeah, well, I mean, because she likes me, but those cats don't give 2 shits about
No.
me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've been watching that fucking thing fly around. Did you Mr. Miyagi that?
I think
you
got
just
it.
did. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be
That's
on
sick.
video too. No man, no. But the love from a dog is the fucking best. But yeah, Linc, let the people know where they can find you at and read more of your stuff
Yeah,
and
sure.
check you out.
On Instagram, I have 2 accounts. I'm at Linc Bigelow, LINC BIGELOW, and then I have a page at Calibrated Mindset, where I just kind of talk shit. And I also have a website, calibratedmindset.com, that is kind of just holding space there. There's a little bit on there, but I have some ideas and stuff in the future that if I ever get some time and support, I may kind of build that out. But for now, it's just a place for me, really for me, to talk to myself and to keep myself going in the right direction.
Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
I enjoy from the outside watching you talk to yourself,
Yeah.
reading your shit talking. And,
For sure.
And I appreciate you coming on tonight and doing some shit talking.
I definitely I learned a lot tonight, and just in general, like you said, looking at your shit and your shit talking helps us. So,
Yeah, good. I'm glad.
you know,
And
keep it up.
yeah, it's cool when you reach out to me. It's like, a lot of times you put this stuff out over a period of time and you're like, what am I doing? Does this even matter? And then, when you call for an opportunity like this, it's like, all right, like, that's cool. Opportunities will come from anything that we keep pouring ourselves into. So,
And like you said, if it's the right thing, opportunities will come.
yeah, exactly.
You know.
So thank you guys for having me.
No
It's been
problem.
cool.
Appreciate you
And,
coming on.
Appreciate
anytime
you.
you want to have me back, just give me a shout.
For
Yeah, man.
sure, we will.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Catch everybody next time. Thank you. Woo! Thank you, sir.
Smokes.